Hello, welcome, and thank you for joining us today. We're going to be discussing real-world use cases of generative AI in the chemical industry. I'm Jacqueline Wasem, head of marketing at Nesh, a sales AI platform designed specifically for chemical and materials companies and their commercial teams. Today, I'm joined by Brendan Boyd and Sid Gupta. Would you both like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Hey, my name is Brendan Boyd. I'm a R&D leader from the chemical industry with about 25 years experience. I was most recently a vice president at a Fortune 500 chemical company, and now the co-owner of two companies.
Thanks, Brendan. Hi, I'm Sid Gupta. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Nesh, chemical and petroleum engineer by training, and then started Nesh about 5 years ago now, and kind of been working with a lot of these chemical companies, helping them out in their sales tools. So excited to talk to you, Jacqueline and Brendan, today.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Well, let's dive right into the topic. Why do companies need to approach GenAI implementations with use cases in mind?
Yeah, no, great question. So I think one of the most compelling use cases that I've seen for GenAI in the chemical industry is particularly in the area of supporting the sales organization. So in my experience in the chemical industry, leading organizations that support sales either through product development or technical support, there is always a need for helping to make sure that the salespeople, who are the frontline folks selling your product, have the information that they need in a timely fashion, both in terms of putting together offers for customers, figuring out how to respond to competitive situations, or just getting basic information that the customer asks as they're kind of going about their daily business. And in my experience, one of the things that can usually derail, quickly solving customer types of problems is just the traditional, like, I've got a question, who do I go to actually get the answer? Do I need to elevate the question to my sales manager because they know the organization better than I do? I've got a contact in this one part of the organization. Do they know somebody that I can go to? And then the typical pattern that you see is folks putting together emails, texts, phone calls to try to get the information that they need. And it's just an incredibly asynchronous type of event with a lot of latency in it. And so when we think about Gen AI types of applications within the chemical industry and sales, I think part of it is how do you take all this information that various subject matter experts have within your organization, be it a technical service, be it a product steward or a regulatory specialist, or other folks that have that information, and how do you make that available to those sales folks when they have those questions,
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, one of the other ones that I've seen around is on the molecule discovery side, is like that would fall more on the R&D front rather than the commercial front, is companies trying to discover new products that can be generated using generative AI, right? I mean, we've seen in the labs it would take a long time to create or discover a new molecule versus Gen AI is kind of speeding that up. Now that's more on the upstream side of the development, but that's also another use case that I've seen. And Brendan, the one you talked about has a very kind of distinct ROI tied to it. So does this one, but we've seen that's another use case that came to mind as how chemical companies are approaching the Gen AI.
Oh yeah, for sure. In today's environment, you're continually finding materials that are in your supply chain that are being regulated out or discontinued for different reasons. The one that's really got a lot of focus right now is PFAS, or polyfluoroalkyl substances, and so there's a great use case for a type of AI to go through and to try to find materials that have the right kind of property set to replace materials that are being regulated out for sure.
Yeah, and also one of the interesting things that it reminded me when you talked about the sales use case was that we're noticing this thing where a lot of the in the chemical industry, a couple of things are happening where not a whole lot of young people are coming into the industry, or it's harder to attract young talent, and the people who are entering the workforce, they're not staying long enough in one role to become experts. There's also a retirement happening in the industry where a lot of the experienced product experts or commercial experts, they are retiring from the companies. And that is creating this kind of vacuum of expertise. So the sales use case that you mentioned, that when the reps come on, they often have a hard time onboarding because they don't have that expert network around them to help them onboard. So that is also an excellent use case for GenAI to then support those reps, because they eventually have to go start selling at some point.
What you were describing was, I think I've heard the term the silver tsunami event that kind of comes, in which maybe your silvered hair professionals, once they reach a point in time, they start to move on. And then there's certainly, the next crop of folks that come in to replace them. And, successfully onboarding people, it's really hard to replace, 20, 25 years of experience, in a 6 month, 9 month, or even 1 year onboarding type of process. It can be very, very difficult. And I think the other demographic trend that you hit on that was pretty true was that, there are fewer students going into the STEM disciplines. And now more than ever, there's more outlets for those STEM discipline, graduates versus going into the chemical industry, be it finance, investment banking, going on and getting law degrees or business degrees as well. And so you have a tendency to have people that start to come into the industry that maybe don't have the chemistry background, or the material science background, which can be a real challenge when you're trying to onboard them to move them into like a specialty material type of product that you're trying to sell and support. Yeah, no, that's for sure it. And the way that shows up, of course, is, the person struggles in that role, and they might struggle in a couple of different ways. One is trying to access the network of subject matter experts. At the same time, a lot of parts of the chemical industry have gone through a continual kind of efforts to remove cost, which means you have fewer and fewer kind of subject matter experts in key functions. And so when those new people come in and they don't have the ability to, access those subject matter experts, either because they don't know the network that exists within the company, or because there's just very few of the subject matter experts and they're kind of overwhelmed with requests coming in from all these different places, it can really kind of increase again, that lag time or that latency between, when a person has a question and then when they can get the information they need to answer that question for themselves and then for their customer too.
I'm curious, Brent, what do you think about this? Do a lot of salespeople, we have seen that there are some salespeople in the industry who have a lot of technical background. I mean, they have PhD in chemistry or they come from a chemical engineering background versus others who don't. Do you know if that trend has changed over time, where there used to be more salespeople with a chemistry background who no longer are there, or what are you seeing?
Yeah, I think in my experience, and I spent about 25 years at one company, so what I saw over that time period was, people moving from having a chemistry or a chemical engineering background in sales, moving more towards people that, might have had a kind of scientific or, scientific adjacent type of degree. And then what would happen is that the organization would then need to figure out, how do I modify, my training materials so that I can kind of train somebody that's coming from a different perspective and a different background than the one that I was used to. But that trend has definitely occurred over the past 20 years.
Yeah. That's great. As we wrap up, is there anything you want to add about tying some of these use cases to ROI as companies consider which GenAI projects they should pursue?
Yeah, I mean, coming from a standpoint of representing potential customers, when somebody goes forth and they're talking about making GenAI type of investment, I mean, they've got to have some type of return on investment in mind. And it's probably unique, and it's going to come down to the pain points that particular customer has. Like Sid and I were talking earlier about, using artificial intelligence to try to, replace materials of concern. Well, there's a definite ROI associated with that if you can do that quickly. I think when you think about other uses like generative AI, looking at how do I decrease the amount of time, between when a salesperson has a question to being able to deliver that answer back to the customer, would certainly be one thing. And you can probably see that in some of your sales metrics in terms of how long opportunities are staying open. And, for the cases where opportunities are staying open because there's an a question that the salesperson has that's not getting answered, certainly expect to see those go down and get to a resolution in terms of whether or not that opportunity is going to convert into a sale or not.
Yeah, and I think like 2025 is going to be the year where companies come out of that trough of disillusionment with GenAI. Like a lot of people experimented with it for the last couple of years. And this year, without having a clear path to ROI, I think a lot of these tools, they'll discover which ones create real value and which ones don't. So I think having the clear ROI tied, like you said, to the use cases that can begin generating revenue or concretely save cost, I think those will become really critical.
Yeah, agree. And then there'll be intangible kind of cases as well, right? Where, what you find is that maybe your sales force is asking specific kind of questions less because they're starting to engage more with a Gen AI tool that's helping get them the information that they need. It can also be a fantastic tool if positioned properly for, supporting and employee development so that they can continue their kind of learning process because, in today's world in which you hire somebody, onboard them, and get them out there to go get the job done, sometimes the effectiveness of your training systems can be a little bit lower. And so using AI as a way of trying to back up, the training that was delivered in person so that they have that after the training session can be a valuable way of advancing their knowledge of your products and, impressing your customers and getting some additional sales.
Excellent. Excellent. So thank you both for your insights today. This is just one in the first of our new series. So we hope everyone checks back in for the next one. Thanks again.